Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another focus activity of 6 to 7. Today, we are going to talk about natural disasters. If you've been here before, if you are still watching from the past hour, my name is Michelle. You probably remember me. But if you are new and you haven't seen me before, my name is Michelle, and I'm originally from Pakistan. And I am a teacher in Milano Meravigli. Today is the first day that I am doing a webinar, a live webinar alone. So I'm a little excited, a little nervous. I've already had one and it went quite well. You guys were great, lots of participation. I see we have a few viewers. If you are new here, please write to us and write to me and let me know where you're from. And we're back. Okay, so moving on, natural disasters. In this focus activity, we are going to look at vocabulary for natural disasters, present perfect versus past simple, to talk about recent world disasters, preparing a safety plan, an interview with a survivor. What are natural disasters? What do you guys think? It defines a natural disaster. The definition we have here says natural disasters are extreme sudden events caused by environmental factors that injure people and cause extensive damage. They can strike anywhere in the world, often without warning. They are very scary, and for the most part, there is never much opportunity to run away. It's hard to get away in time or be able to. Natural disasters. Brainstorm a list of natural disasters. How many can you think of? Okay, so let's talk about the most common. I think that would be an earthquake. Hi, Sonia. How are you? It's nice to see you again. How has the start to your week been? Has it been a good Monday so far? I hope it has. It's good to have you back. We are talking about natural disasters and brainstorming a list. And the most common natural disaster, I think, is an earthquake. So scientists say that there are thousands, if not hundreds, of tiny earthquakes every day. They're usually so small that we can't detect them, we can't feel them. But there are some earthquakes which turn into natural disasters, really big earthquakes in which buildings collapse and people die. What else? Um, Floods. A flood is when the water doesn't wash away into the sea. When it rains a lot, the rivers rise and they overflow onto the banks, the sides of the rivers, and the level of the water keeps rising. So those are quite dangerous. What about a hurricane? And then we have a tornado. Oh, that's the wrong spelling. Sorry. So what's interesting is sometimes myself included, people get confused between a hurricane and a tornado. I don't know if you guys are um, part part of that category, but I'm definitely one of those people. So a tornado forms over land, but a hurricane forms over water. A tornado moves very, very fast, about 300 miles per hour, but hurricanes don't move that fast. They move about less. They move approximately half as fast, so that's about 180 miles per hour. And tornadoes don't last very long. They usually last for an hour, but a hurricane can last for weeks. So if you were confused, you have your answer now. Sonia, can you think of any other natural disasters? I'm going to give you guys a minute to type it in because sometimes the answers take some time to get to me. Okay, we have the opposite of a flood. That is called a drought. When there's no water at all, there's no water to drink, there's no water for the plants to grow, there's no water for the animals to drink, there's no water to wash. Of course, we have fires. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and see how many of these we've covered. Okay, so we spoke about an earthquake, fantastic. A tsunami. A tsunami is when a huge wave of water travels to the land. What happens is that the the ground beneath the sea it shifts. So there's an earthquake underneath the ocean, the sea, and when that shifts, when the ground shifts, a massive wave is generated, and this wave can reach thousands of miles and destroy many, many things. In fact, everything in its path. Sonia says, volcano eruption. Yeah, that's a good one. Volcano eruption. We also have a heat wave. A heat wave is when it gets very hot for a few days, and we experienced this last year in June and in July. It got extremely, extremely hot for a few days, and then it became less hot. It was still hot, but not as hot. After that, we have an avalanche. Yes, an avalanche is when snow falls off a mountain, the large quantities of snow, and it can be very dangerous because people can get buried underneath the snow and potentially freeze to death. We have floods. We've discussed that. Landslide. So a landslide is when there's an earthquake and the ground moves and lots of lots of earth falls down. I hope that is um, a good explanation. Let me explain factors that trigger a landslide. It can be heavy rainfall, poor construction, of course, an earthquake, even a volcano. The ground on top of a region is affected and the earth falls down. So it can be quite horrible. A severe thunderstorm, those can be bad. A blizzard. A blizzard is a snowstorm. Then we have a tornado. We just spoke about the differences between a tornado and a hurricane. Forest fires. We've seen many forest fires in the past 12 months. If you think about the Amazon, you think about Australia, those were horrible natural disasters. And then we even spoke about drought. Okay, so we didn't do too bad. What do you think is the worst type of natural disaster and why? Okay, that's a good question. What do you think, Sonia? What is the worst type of natural disaster? I I I want to say a tsunami because there was a tsunami recently in my part of the world, and it was devastating. Its effects were quite horrible. So I would have to say tsunami just because I have some personal experience with it. But what do you guys think? Write in and let me know. What do you think is the worst type of natural disaster and why? The power of the planet. Have you or someone you know ever experienced a natural disaster? What happened? Okay, so I've been very lucky. Thankfully, I've never experienced a natural disaster, or I haven't experienced a natural disaster as yet. Um, Sonia says, okay, the worst natural disaster, in my opinion, is the earthquake. Yes, that is also pretty bad. Absolutely. It's a very scary situation. What do you think, Sonia? Do you or someone have you or has someone you've known ever experienced a natural disaster? Someone I know has experienced an earthquake, and I've experienced an earthquake as well, but not an earthquake where there was any where buildings fell or anyone was injured. I was in a building and the building moved. There was an earthquake, and I felt the building move. And I believe I was um, I was studying for my A levels at that point, so I must have been 17. It, yeah, I must have been 16, 17, and I was really scared, but because earlier that year there had been several earthquakes in my country, and they had proven to be fatal in some cases. So I was a bit scared, and but we all remained calm, and we all evacuated the building and stood downstairs. But there were a few minor tremors after that, but nothing as major as what we had felt. And we later found out that they were tremors from the earlier earthquake, which had been really horrible. So, but not a true natural disaster, luckily, because nothing happened in the end. Have you ever experienced a natural disaster, Sonia? Have there been any natural disasters in the world recently? What happened? What caused it? Were there any casualties or fatalities? Absolutely. There have been quite a few natural disasters in the world recently, right? Um, I've mentioned Australia. I think that was quite quite bad. There were horrible fires. that went on for weeks, and many animals died. I think a billion. The number is insane. Then we've had the Amazon on fire. That was really scary as well. What else? We've had the earthquake in Italy, and we had the floods in Venice. There has What else has been happening? Well, there's drought in Africa, hurricanes and tornadoes in the US. Yes. So the world has experienced some, if not all, of these natural disasters. Which natural disasters occur in your country? In my country, well, earthquakes and landslides, and that's it. Sonia says that fortunately, she's had little experiences. She hasn't had much experience. She had a little experience with an earthquake many years ago in Italy, in Friuli. Okay, and I'm glad that it was a small experience, just like my experience was small, best kind. Okay, cause and effect. Match each disaster to its possible cause. Landslide, drought, wildfire, tornado, avalanche. Lightning, carelessness, arson, volcanic eruption, unstable air in the atmosphere, severe deficiency in water supply, when a build-up of material is released, earthquake, volcanic eruptions, or general instability in the surrounding land. Okay, so I'm going to give you guys a couple of minutes to type in the answers. So first, a landslide is when there is an earthquake, a volcanic eruption. It's caused by an earthquake, volcanic eruption, or general instability in the surrounding land. Okay, so what causes a drought? A drought is when there is no water available anywhere. There's no water to drink, there's no water to wash, there's no water to cook with, there's no water for the animals. So I would say a severe deficiency in water supply causes a drought. Next, wildfire. Fire. We have three options. I think that it is option number one, lightning, carelessness, arson, volcanic eruption. Okay, fantastic. So arson is when someone intentionally lights fire to something. So it's not an accident, it's done with the intention of causing fire. Tornado results because of unstable air in the atmosphere. An avalanche is caused by a buildup of material. Okay, moving on. True or false? A natural disaster is always a bad thing. See if you can figure out which phrases are true. Number one, shouting loudly can cause an avalanche. Number two, small forest fires can be good for the ecosystem. All right. Number three, volcanoes add nutrients to the soil. Number four, tsunamis can only travel for about 100 miles. Number five, there are thousands of earthquakes across the earth each day. Number six, three out of every four tornadoes happen in the US. So the first answer is false. I've always actually thought it's true because I see it in the movies, and I've seen many people shout in the movies, and there is an avalanche, snow starts falling. But apparently, that isn't true. That's not backed by science. That's just something people do in the movies to look cool. Number two, true or false? I think this is true because small, fantastic. It can remove brush, dead brush and allow for new growth. So dead brush is the dead leaves and plants on the ground of the forest. Okay, Sonia, good work. First one false. Okay, it's great that you knew that. Second one true. Good job. Third one true. Fourth one also possibly true. Okay, let's find out. Yes, it is true. They allow for new crops. If you know the mountain, if you look at Mount Etna, which is the volcano near Catania, it has the area around it is very fertile. You have some great um, plants and fruit and vegetables that grow there because of the nutrients in the soil from the volcano. Tsunamis can only travel for about 100 miles. This is false because they can travel for thousands of miles, which is what makes them so dangerous. Okay, what about number five? What do you guys think? I think it's true. Yes, most are too small to be detected. This is true. But another interesting fact, ever since coronavirus has caused people to stay at home, they're not traveling, there's not much work going on, there are no planes. There are planes, there are some planes, but aren't as many, of course, as they were pre-corona times. So now scientists can detect even more earthquakes and these were the earthquakes that they couldn't detect before because there was just too much interference from our daily lives. So that's pretty interesting. And number six, Sonia says number five is true and number six is false. Okay, let's find out. It's true. The US is tornado country. It has some of the biggest tornadoes in the world. Okay, safety tips. What should you do in each of these situations? That's a good question. What do you think, Sonia? What should you do? If there is an bleep, you should bleep. Our options are earthquake, drought, tornado, hurricane, blizzard, heat wave, flood. And our actions are run to higher ground, move to an open space, stay inside, evacuate immediately, call emergency crews, drink lots of water, conserve, save water, run to a basement, seek shelter. What else? Other. Okay, if there is an earthquake, you should move to an open space. Definitely move to where there are no buildings and yeah, it's open and there's nothing that can fall on you. Okay, is there Sonia, why don't you write in and let me know what you think we should do in case of a natural disaster? If there is a drought, you should conserve or save water. Fantastic, good work, Sonia. Number one, move to an open space. Number two, conserve water. Okay, if there is a tornado, okay, if there is a tornado, what should you do? What do you think, Sonia? This one's a bit tricky. Sonia says stay inside. Okay, yeah, I think that's good advice. Stay inside. Perhaps also run to a basement. If you guys remember, Sonia, if you remember the Wizard of Oz with Dorothy, and there was a tornado, and her aunt and uncle went to the basement to hide there because tornadoes are very, very fast. They move very fast, but they only stay for an hour or so. So, yep, definitely stay inside, like Sonia says, and run to the basement. What should you do if there is a hurricane? You should, mm, a hurricane. I think a hurricane, you would have to evacuate. You should evacuate immediately, definitely. Hurricanes are very dangerous, I believe, and there is no way to outrun them because if you remember, Hurricane Katrina completely destroyed New Orleans. So they're not all that that serious. I think that was like a category 4 or 5, but they are pretty deadly nonetheless. No, so Sonia says stay inside and run to a basement. So because the hurricane lasts so long, you can't hide in the basement for too long because the basement is going to flood and then you'll have nowhere to go. So running to a basement is usually not a good idea in a hurricane. But I have never been in a hurricane, nor have I ever lived in a country which is frequented by hurricanes. So my guess is just what I have seen or picked up from Google. You stay inside and stay safe. but don't go to the basement. Okay, let's move on. What do you think about the next one, Sonia? What about a blizzard, a snowstorm? What should you do? I think if there is a blizzard, you should seek shelter. Definitely find someplace warm and covered to spend the night, spend the day, spend 2 weeks, however long it takes for the blizzard to die down. Heat wave. Like we discussed before, a heat wave is when it gets really hot for a few days. If there is a heat wave, you should drink lots of water. Because one of the dangers of heat wave is dehydration. When you're completely depleted of all moisture within your body, and it's very dangerous. So definitely drink lots of water and also seek shelter. Don't be out and about in the sun. Flood. Yeah, Sonia, that's a good idea. Definitely. If there is a heat wave, stay inside. Oh no, that's the blizzard. Yep, that's good advice. If there is a blizzard, stay inside. Don't go out. What about number 6 and 7? If there is a flood, you should run to higher ground because a flood means water levels are rising, so you need to get to higher ground until the water level drops or someone can come rescue you. Okay, I'm gonna give it a couple of minutes for Sonia's answer to come through. Okay, so someone says that hurricane in a hurricane you should and could run to a basement. So Sonia, you could be right for number 4 as well. Like I said, I'm not an expert, so you could be right. Fantastic. Sonia's advice for everything is stay inside. She's in the quarantine mood, right, Sonia? The advice for everything now is stay inside. Best way to stay safe. Run to a basement and run to higher ground. Fantastic. Okay, in a heat wave, okay, I understand. Maybe you mean run to a basement as in run to some place where it's cooler. It's not as hot. But I don't think the best advice for a heat wave would be run to a basement. It would be drink lots of water or stay inside. Okay, a safety plan and witness interview. A witness interview. Let's try the safety plan. A safety plan. Do you have an emergency plan in your home if something were to happen? If so, what? If not, why not? What could you do to prepare for the worst? Okay, do I have an emergency plan? No, I do not have an emergency plan. When this whole corona situation happened, um, when we were first learning about it and we were still trying to understand what it was, we had an emergency plan, which was basically just have our things ready if we had to leave for some reason, which was probably an unrealistic emergency plan, but it was something I guess very dramatic because now that you look at it, it makes no sense. But that was our emergency plan, a bag that was ready to go. So And that's beyond that, I don't really have a plan. But the bag is important because the bag has documents. And I think in any emergency plan, that should be your priority, that you have your irreplaceable documents with you, like your passport, um, maybe your laptop, because that's pretty important. It's not a document, but it is important. And any essentials which you feel would help you get through the next few days. So maybe a few toiletries, an extra pair of clothes. Apart from that, I don't really have an emergency plan. But Sonia, if you have an emergency plan, please share and maybe I can be inspired to create my own. What could you do to prepare for the worst? Okay, so since these days the worst is the coronavirus, let's talk about that. So our options are first, plan an escape route. Okay, that's important. How will you leave? Have a reserve of water and non-perishable food items. Non-perishable food items are food items which do not go bad. For example, canned corn, canned tuna. So these have a long shelf life. Pasta. Keep a flashlight and extra batteries on hand. This is a good tip. Definitely always have a flashlight in case there's an earthquake and there are no lights, and extra batteries. Keep a list of emergency numbers in sight at all times. I do have this. I have a list of emergency numbers up on my refrigerator. I think that's always important, and that's something my mother has been very specific. My mother and my father very specific on. Always know the emergency numbers. Keep a supply of extra blankets, clothing, and cash in a safe place. Yeah, that I think that is quite smart. The clothing and cash, yes. But if you're running away, perhaps extra blankets might be too much to carry. Well, I suppose it depends on what the emergency is, of course. Why is it important to have a safety plan in place? Sonia says, I have an emergency plan in my shop, not in my home. Oh, that's good. And where you work, it's even more important because there are usually more people. So they're more dangerous. And if you work in a factory or something like that, it can be dangerous because the risk is greater. So definitely a good evacuation plan, a good emergency plan is critical. Good job, Sonia. I think I just answered this question. Okay, in pairs, select one type of disaster and prepare a safety plan for your home. What do you need? What do you need to worry about? Family members, pets, children, etc. Okay, so let's talk about an earthquake because it's the most common. So I think I would have an escape route, so the escape route would have to be just leaving straight away, which means that there's no time to pack a bag. So you need to have a bag ready, a backpack, something that's easy and light with just the essentials, an extra pair of clothes, maybe some extra cash, passport, maybe some ID of any sort. Maybe it has some water. And yeah, I think if you have that, you can just run out of the house during an earthquake without much concern because you know you've got the bare minimum. What about family members, pets, children, etc.? Well, I don't live with family members or children or pets, so I'm good. But I do understand that if you do live with family members, pets, children, etc., it could be a problem. Well, with your pet, you just have to pick up your pet and run. I have a pet back home, not in Italy, and I would just pick up my pet and run because I could. The time it would take me to convince her would be precious time lost. I would just grab her with one hand and run. Children. Well, I think with children, Ricardo, you have a point. I worry about family members before pets. I'm not worried about before family members, after pets, and at the end thing. Okay, so fantastic. Ricardo has priorities. He says first he worries about his family, then pets, and then the other things. That is a good list. Yeah, definitely. Like I said, I live alone, so I have no family or pets. So all I have are things. But if I lived with my family, yes, definitely. I think with children, for example, you have to train them and prepare them for a natural disaster and explain to them um, how you need to evacuate. So definitely do some drills with them, evacuation drills, fire drills, just to prepare them for um, for a situation like that. Sorry, let me just type this out. So basically, prepare them for a situation like that so that they are aware of how to handle themselves. So once you've trained them, if there is um, a natural disaster, you can immediately tell them, okay, guys, this is not a drill. We need to remember how we practice. We need to do that now. And family members, well, you have a drill with everyone, so everyone knows. So you have a drill with everyone, so that everyone knows about this. That's how you prepare for a natural disaster. You never know when it's going to happen. It's usually sudden. You don't have time. Ricardo says depends on how much time you have. Okay, so remember we say depends with an E and much time because time is uncountable. So it depends on how much time you have. Absolutely, Ricardo. It depends because usually there isn't much time. You just have to move. So that's why I think it's a great idea to have like these drills and these practice runs before so that they are prepared, family members and children and pets, and they know how to behave and what to do when disaster strikes. And if everybody has a little bag of their own packed and ready, then I think the entire family can breathe a bit easy, at least as far as the essentials are concerned. Okay, let's look at the other one. An eyewitness interview. Imagine you are a witness in the middle of a natural disaster. You have seen everything, and now you are being interviewed by a reporter from the local TV station. In pairs, complete this interview, creating answers to the reporter's questions, then switch roles. Okay, unfortunately, this is not really something we can do, but it's a fun idea. But let's make these questions, and these are the kind of questions that reporters ask people who are being affected by a natural disaster. And I think these are the kind of questions that reporters are asking people these days. In the middle of the COVID 19, This is what people are asking. What has just happened? So, what have you gone through? What did you see when when people see an accident of some sort? How did you feel? Have there been any casualties or fatalities? So, a fatality is when someone dies, and a casualty is when someone is died or injured. So, if someone is killed or injured, um, what did you do when you first saw what was happening? What was your initial reaction to it? How has it affected? How has it affected your house, job, family? Note: use present perfect to talk about what has just happened and past simple to talk about finished events. So a good example would be if I had just seen someone being taken away in an ambulance, I would say, I would use the present perfect. For example, I have witnessed a man um, being taken away. I witnessed a man taken away by the ambulance. What did you see? Um, I've heard sirens, and it was, and they were quite loud. Ricardo says, I have witnessed a fire and I saw big flames from a flat. Wow, that is a bit scary. I hope everything worked out and everyone was fine in the end. How do you feel? How did you feel, Ricardo, when you saw this? This is what you witnessed. This is what you're telling us what you saw. Now, how do you feel? And were there any casualties? I felt very shocked. Absolutely. I can't imagine. That must be very shocking indeed. Have there been any casualties or fatalities? Unfortunately, we are running out of time, so I may not get to hear see your answers, but please send them through nonetheless. Um, Thank you for being here, Ricardo and Sonia, and interacting. I really appreciate that. It made the lesson a little better. And it was great discussing natural disasters with you. I hope you guys. Oh, well, Ricardo says that afterwards, firefighters arrived with big stairs. Fantastic. So those stairs are called ladders. Okay, singular, ladder, plural, ladders. Okay, guys, thank you so much for all your patience. This has been great, and I will see you again soon. Have a good evening and a great week. Bye, everyone.